Welcome, friends, to the Play Guitar Podcast. I am Lee, and I'm here to help you become the guitar player that you always wanted to be. We're going to be talking about the differences between the major blues scale and the minor blues scale. You probably all thought, hey, there's something called the blues scale. And a lot of people get confused. They think it's the minor pentatonic scale because that's the scale that we play over blues. Right? But there's some other sounds that we're going to explore today that use these pentatonic scales, but we add a little bit to them. So these are very important scales. We hear them all the time, every day in the songs that we listen to in multiple styles of music. They're very important as a songwriter or an improviser. The sound that we get from them adds tension to the regular pentatonic scales. It's very simple. We're adding one note to a pentatonic scale. And this note is outside of what we're used to hearing. This certain note adds tension to the pentatonic scales. If you think about it, the major pentatonic scale, you have 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, all from the major scale. So you've got the first, the third, and the fifth, with the second and the sixth in there. There's a lot of arpeggio notes in there. It's a very inside sounding scale. It's very solid sounding scales. In the minor pentatonic scale, you've got the first, the flat third, the fourth, fifth, and the flat seventh. Pretty much, it's an arpeggio of an E minor 11th chord, right? It's an E minor 7th chord with an extra note in there. These are arpeggios. These are strong notes. Most of them are. Of course, the tonic note is the strongest of all of them. But as you play these, you get comfortable because they all sound pretty good, right? When you play the full scale, you start to go, oh man, there's some notes in there I'm not so sure about. But when we stick to the pentatonics, it feels comfortable. It feels like home. It feels like you can do no wrong. Well, at some point in your progression as a guitar player, you start to hear things in other people's playing that is not represented in your own. It happens to everyone. Your ear develops to a certain point where you go, there's more to what's going on than what I'm doing. So what are those things? And you start to pay attention to tension and release, notes that are stronger and notes that are weaker. And you realize in all your favorite solos and all your favorite songs, you have both, and they're both important. We've only been doing one side of it. We've only been doing the notes that sound great. But there's some other notes that if you played them right, if you featured these notes right on one, they wouldn't sound so good. But there's an art to using these notes to create something that's next level. A lot of it has to do with the rhythm when you play these notes that have tension in there. So when I'm ready to take them into a place where we start to go outside of the core sounds, do some sounds that are a little bit different, have a little bit tension. The blues scales, and there's 2 of them, those are the places that I go to first. It's a great way to dip your toes in the water for tension and release. And we just talked about the major pentatonic scale. That was the 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. And we add a certain note into that. So here is, let's do C major pentatonic. So we have C, D, E, G, A. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a certain note to this. So in this pattern 1 pattern, I'm going to start with my pinky on the low string on the 8th fret. Then on the 5th fret, there's my 2nd degree of the scale. There's my D. And now I'm going to add a note right above it. A D sharp or an E flat. And notice that doesn't sound so great. That's a minor note. In fact, that's a minor third. If we were playing a C chord, that note's going to clash. That is a minor third being played over a chord that has a major third in it. As we go on, the next note is the major third. So we have both notes in the major blues scale. That minor third, this is going to be our tension note. This is where we dip our toes in the water. to add something that's not a core sound to our lines. And as I go up, we finish this off with on the D string at the 5th fret. That's our G. Then 7th fret, that's our A. And then we start over again. At the 5th fret on the G string, that's our root note. That's our C. And then we have D at the 7th fret. Next string at the 5th fret. We have E. That's our major third. But if I put a note in between that D and that E, I'm going to use my pinky back on the G string on the 8th fret. There's our minor third, the next octave up, and finish on up the major pentatonic scale. So we get this. To me, that sounds like Charlie Daniels Band or this kind of late 70s Southern rock type bands. But what you'll find is this major blues scale, you'll hear it. You'll hear it in bluegrass music. You hear it in chicken picking country guitar. It's in blues. It's all over the place. It's in rock music. The major blues scale is used all sorts of places. I remember when I was first starting, we had just the blues scale. That was different than the pentatonic scale. And no one said anything about the major blues scale. But this scale was played. I don't know, people called it something different, but now they're differentiating between the two because the patterns are the same. So let's take a look at that. Let's move on to our other blues scale. This is the minor blues scale. Now we're going to take that same pattern that we played, but we're going to start it with the first finger this time. So I'm going to slide everything up so then my first finger is on C. And I play the same pattern one with the added note in the same place. Now that note that we put in there this time, this is an F sharp. If you recognize that interval, you've got good ears, right? It's a harsh interval. It's a tritone. It's a sharp 4, flat 5, right? So that note we're entering into our lines. So if I was playing like a blues, and all I played was that note, it's going to sound horrible. It's going to sound harsh. If I played it right on one, it's going to hit you over the face with that sound. But there are a lot of rock songs, blues songs, in minors, even country songs that use this sound as a tension note, as a passing note to go to a strong note. And it's very nice. When we were in major, we had a major third right above it. It wants to resolve up. In minor, we could go either way. So the minor blues scale with this sharp 4 or flat 5, if you go back, it resolves to the 4th. To me, that sounds heavy. If you go forward, it sounds light. And I've said this on a few podcasts before, but this is a good place to see the differences between the two. So here's major blues and minor blues. Quite a mood that they each set. I find the major pentatonic pretty plain, and I find that the minor pentatonic goes straight to blues. But with these added notes in here, it's a whole different mood. I always tell my coaching students, what we're building is a palette of colors that we can pick and choose from when we're creating, when we're making lines, whether you're writing a solo or improvising a solo. And these are definitely two separate sounds than the regular pentatonics. Just one note changes everything. So, okay, Lee, that's fine. But when are we going to use these scales, right? When should I use the blues scale? In the same way that you use the pentatonics, right? We have three situations we're going to find ourselves in. A major type situation, either over a major chord or a major chord progression. A minor type situation over a minor chord or a minor chord progression, or over a dominant situation, something with sevens. Like if I played a C7 chord here, how would each of these sound over it? And one of the things we do with my coaching students is we figure out, well, how does this sound to you? Where would you use these in? I would use them anytime where I wanted to add some tension in there. But what we do is we go through all of those different things, different backing tracks, and we figure out, use your ears. What scale fits best to you over each one of those? And I'll leave that to you to go through. You try to play these over top of some different situations. See which ones sound great and which ones sound a little too outside for your tastes. And everyone's going to be different on this. These, especially the major where you've got the minor third and the major third in there, you can do some stuff with that, right? How would these sound over a traditional blues tune? How would the major pentatonic sound over traditional blues? But one of the things that a lot of people like to do is they like to mix them together. They like to say, if you're playing, one of the things that you'll discover, hopefully, is that when you play over a dominant seventh chord, it gives you a lot of freedom. You can kind of pick and choose from either one. So let's start off over our C dominant seventh chord. I'll start off playing the minor blues scale, and then I'll switch over to the major blues scale. I hope you could hear that, every measure or so I was switching between the two. It's a really nice sound. I'm playing off of the major third on both of them and adding those, the blue notes, the minor third over the major blues scale, and then the sharp four, the tritone over the minor blues scale. And one of the other things I hope you notice is that every once in a while I would feature that, and it was pretty jarring. I'd start off on the very first note of a phrase. So right away it sounds out, but it wants to go into a strong note there. So strong notes and weak notes. What would I use this? I would use this. You know that point when you're playing a solo where you've just run out? That point of the solo, you just totally run out of ideas. And you're going like, gosh, I'm just playing the same thing over and over and over again. That might be a good time. To maybe throw this in. It's just one extra note, and it's in these pentatonic patterns that you're already playing, right? Now, I'm not going to go through all the patterns. You can do that on your own. I'm not going to, give you going into depth with this. I'm just answering the question, what's the difference between the major blues scale and the minor blues scale? I think we've done that so far. But to leave you with this, I'm just kind of introducing an idea into your thoughts, the blues scales. Oh, it's something I can really sink my teeth into without much effort there. How would you practice this? What's the best way to practice these? Well, what we're doing is we're doing our pentatonic scales. And hopefully you're practicing your pentatonic scales all over the fretboard. The sooner you do it, the sooner you're going to master the fretboard. It's that simple. The sooner you start thinking of the fretboard as a whole, the sooner you're going to master it. If you keep staying in one pattern all the time or two patterns all the time, you're going to be stuck there. So as you're going through your patterns, I might play major pentatonic up and back, and then do the major blues scale up and back, the same pattern. So you can see where these notes that you're throwing in. Now, for each pattern of the 5 patterns, it's going to be different. And yes, you can go get a scale sheet, and it will tell you exactly what to do. But wouldn't it be something if you took the time and counted out the intervals in these scale patterns, and then in between the second and the third added the note there? In all of the patterns, if you did it by ear, and by thinking and by theory, instead of just being shown what to do. Wonderful things happen to you when you discover things on your own instead of you're told what to do. They become yours. They become that you get a little pride. Hey, I came up with that. I figured that out. Now, of course, everyone else has been doing it before, but it makes sense to me because I came to it on my own there. So I would love for you to go through your pentatonic scales and add these blue notes in on your own and see if they stick. I have a feeling they will. So the tips for practicing those is in your regular practice of pentatonic scales. Play each pattern up and down, and then play the blues scale version of that pattern up and down as well, so you can see it right under your fingers. And the last thing I want to leave you with is I would encourage you, now I didn't have a backing track today, but I would encourage you to practice over some sort of track, preferably a one chord track, so you can hear what these notes are doing, how they're matching to the harmony that's behind you. I know a lot of us just like to pick up the guitar and we just want to solo, or we just want to practice our scales up and down. No metronome, no backing track, just playing them. But at some point, you realize that doesn't help your ear a whole lot. Yes, you can know the scales, but knowing the scales is one thing, but being able to use them effectively is another thing. And for that, we have to build our ears, meaning hearing how these notes affect the harmony that's playing behind it. Do they match or do they not match? When is it okay to play a note that doesn't match so well? How does it resolve to the new ones? You have to be able to hear both of those at the same time. So I would love for you to try a little bit of that on your own. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to introduce these things to you today. If you didn't know them already, if you did, I hope maybe I've clarified them a little bit. And if you're ready to get into scales, if say you're a beginner, you've only been doing chords, and maybe you know a few scales, the big step is being able to play scales all up and down the fretboard. It's not a lot of work, but it is something that requires some focus. And I have a free Big 4 scale pattern worksheet. These are the 4 scale patterns that you're going to hear in most music there, and they'll give you the pentatonics, which you can add this new note to if you'd like to. And that's over playguitaracademy.com/big_4_scale_worksheet, or just click the link in the description, or just go to the Play Guitar Academy. It's on the front page there. Okay, so great to spend time with you today. I'm going to call it That's a Wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. Make sure to hit the button below to subscribe to the show. Have you subscribed to the show? Have you? You listened this far. I've got more shows coming, I promise. Subscribe. You'll get them. It'll be fun. And we can have a good time. If you've benefited from the podcast, if you think everything is helping you, which is my intention, all I ask is a favorable review over Apple Podcasts. The more you do that, the more our podcast goes out to the rest of the world. It's the best way, I say this each week, to make sure we get this very valuable content to more guitar players around the world. And become a member. Head over to the Academy. Every Wednesday we get together, we do a Q&A, we do some lessons there, we have a lot of fun, and we get all of the backing tracks, all of the guitar profiles, all the PDFs from the lesson videos that I put out on YouTube every week. They're exclusive to Academy members, and you have the entire roadmap that takes you from not knowing anything about music all the way to advanced guitar player each week at a time. It's all there for you, and it's a very low price for what you're getting for that. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next episode.